Okay, today I'm using my iPhone 7 because the other phone is downstairs. So let's continue with this chapter and hope that everything goes well. Yeah. Okay. Yesterday I completed chapter 6. Oh, was it chapter 6, right? Let me just see. Yeah, chapter 6. Wow, there's still quite a lot of interesting topic ahead. So yesterday I was talking about chapter 6, right? Okay. Chapter 6 now is chapter 7. I hope I got it right. Yeah. V1 and this one is V2, so should be 7. And how many pages is this? Because I'm going to skip especially things that when he goes into giving like a kind of tables, or when it's an exercise, I will skip most of it from my books reading because it's very hard to explain. So it's better you buy his book or whoever book that I'm reading and hope that you enjoy it as much as I do from the learning. Okay, chapter 7, breaking the barrier of convention. There are no rules, laws, or traditions that apply universally, including this one. The world is full of shoulds that people apply to their behavior without evaluation, and the total of these shoulds makes up a very large erroneous zone. You may be guided by a set of rules and principles to which you don't even subscribe, and yet you are unable to break away and decide for yourself what works and doesn't work for you. Nothing is absolute. There are no rules or laws which always make sense or provide the greatest amount of good for all occasions. Flexibility is a greater virtue, and yet you may first find it difficult, indeed impossible, to break an unsurvivable law or violate absurd tradition. These are the two most difficult things that I face also. Even to this day, I still facing this type of issues. Fitting into your society or uncultural relation may be useful for getting along at times, but carried to an extreme, it can be a neurosis, particularly when unhappiness, depression, and anxiety are the consequences of your meeting the shoulds. Nowhere is it being implied or in any way suggested that you become contemptuous of the law or break rules simply because you see fit to do so. Laws are necessary and order is an important part of civilized society. But blind adherence to convention is something else entirely, something in fact which may be far more destructive to the individual than violation of the rules. These are the things that make people jump from the cliff of a hill, because it's so unexplained, and past topic have been mentioning a lot about things like that. The unwritten rules. Often rules are foolish and traditions no longer make any sense. When this is the case, you are unable to function effectively because you must follow census rules. That is the time to reconsider the rules and your behavior. As Abraham Lincoln once put it, I never had a policy that I could always apply. I simply attempted to do what made the greatest amount of sense at that moment. He was not a slave to a single policy that had to apply in every single case, even if the policy was written with such an intention. A, a should is unhealthy only when it gets in the way of healthy and effective behavior. This is happening a lot in my life also, because they say you should follow the rules, you should do this, you should do that. But in actual fact, the whole environment have changed. So when you propose something to whoever, they feel offended because you don't follow the rules. And there are people who are so stickle for rules that they forgot they have to live in order to survive. Instead, no, I should say, they think they have to follow the rules in order to survive. In actual fact, it's empty up here because they just follow the rules, and they think that is what going to bring them to the future. God bless them. Maybe I will feel, but I'm happy with the journey. So that is the most important part of it. A closer examination of this internal versus external control of yourself will be helpful before continuing to look at these erroneous masks which may cluster your life. Internal versus external locus of control. It has been estimated that a full 75% of the people in our culture are more external than internal in their personality orientation. This means that the chances are that you fit into this category more often than you don't. What does it mean to be external in your locus of control? Essentially, you are external if you assign responsibility for your emotional states in your present moments to someone or something external to yourself. Thus, if you were to be asked the question, why do you feel bad? And you responded with answer like, my parents mistreat me. She hurt my feeling, my friends don't like me, my luck is down, or things aren't going well. You would be in the external category. Okay, review what you have said from now on. Conversely, if you are asked why you are so happy and you responded, my friends treat me well, my luck has changed, nobody is bugging me, or she came through for me, you are still the external frame assigning responsibility for how you feel to someone or something outside of you. The internal locus of control person puts the responsibility for how he feels squarely on his own shoulders, and this person is indeed rare in our culture. When asked the same question, he responds with internal oriented answers such as, I tell myself the wrong things. I put too much emphasis on what people say. I worry about what someone else thinks. I'm not strong enough now to avoid being unhappy, and I don't have the skill to keep me from being miserable. Similarly, when the internal put together person is up, he responds with I references as I work hard at being happy. I make things work for me. I'm telling myself the right things. I'm in charge of me, and this is where I choose to be. Thus, you have 1/4 of the people taking responsibility for their own feeling, and 3/4 bestowing blame on external sources. Where do you fit in? Virtually all shoulds and traditions are imposed by external sources. That is, they come from someone or something outside of yourself. If you are loaded with shoulds and unable to break conventions which are prescribed by others, then you are in the external bag. An excellent example of this externally directed kind of thinking is a client who came to me recently. We'll call her Barbara. Her major grievances was an obesity problem, but she had a host of minor complaints as well. When we started to discuss her weight problem, she said that she has always been overweight because she has a metabolism problem, and also because her mother has forced food on her as a child. Her pattern of overeating continued on, she says, because her husband had neglected her and her children were inconsiderate of her. She had tried everything, she lamented: Weight Watcher, pills, a variety of diet doctors, even astrology. I didn't know astrology can lose weight. Maybe I should try. Just joking. Therapy was to be her last resort. If I couldn't make her lose weight, she said, no one could. As Barbara told her story and viewed her own dilemma, it was no wonder she couldn't lose those unwanted pounds. Everything and everybody was conspiring against her. Her mother, her husband, her children, even her own body and the star. Weight watchers and diet doctors might be able to help less afflicted souls, but in Barbara's case, the odds against her were too great. Barbara was a classic example of external thinking. It was her mother, her husband, her children, and some uncontrollable part of her own body that made her fat. It had nothing to do with her own choices to eat or overeat certain food at certain times. Moreover, her attempt to elevate her situation was an externally directed as her perception of the problem itself. Instead of recognizing that she has chosen to overeat in the past, she would have to learn to make new choices if she wanted to lose weight. Barbara turned to other people and things. Society accepted conventions for weight loss. When all her friends went to Weight Watchers, Barbara went. Each time a friend discovered a new diet doctor, Barbara was close on her heels for help. After several weeks of counseling, Barbara began to recognize that her unhappiness and her complaints were the result of her own choice, not the actions of others. It began with an admission that simply ate too much, often more than she really wanted, and did not exercise enough. Her first decision was to change her eating habit through sheer discipline. She could and would manipulate her own mind. Next time she felt hungry, she resolved to reward herself with the thought of her own internal strength rather than a cookie. Instead of blaming her husband and children for treating her badly and driving her to the food, she began to see that she has been playing the martyr for years, virtually begging them to exploit her. Once Barbara began demanding to be treated well, she found that her family was only too ready to treat her that way. And instead of seeking solace in food, she found fulfillment in relationship based on mutual respect and love. Barbara even decided to spend less time with her mother, whom she had come to see as running her life, and ruined it with overdoses of food. Once Barbara came to recognize that her mother did not control her and that she could see her when she chose to, not when her mother said she should, and similarly that she didn't have to eat that piece of chocolate cake just because her mother said she should. Barbara began to enjoy rather than resent the time they spent together. Finally, Barbara realized that therapy had nothing to do with anything outside herself. I couldn't change her. She had to change herself. It took time, but gradually with effort, Barbara replaced her external shoulds with internal standards of her own. She is now not only thinner but happier as well. She knows that it isn't her husband or her children, her mother or the star that are making her happy. She knows it is herself, for now she controls her own mind. Fatalists, determinists, and people who believe in luck are in the external slot. If you believe your life is mapped out for you in advance and you need only follow the appropriate roads, then you are very likely loaded with all the shoulds that will keep you on your roadmap. You can never find self-fulfillment if you persist in permitting yourself to be controlled by external forces or persist in thinking that you are controlled by external forces. Being effective does not mean eliminating all the problems in your life. It does not mean moving your locus of control from the external to the internal. In that way, you make yourself responsible for everything that you experience emotionally. You are not a robot running your life through a maze filled up with other people's rules and regulations that don't even make sense to you. You can take a sterner look at the rules and begin to exercise some internal control over your own thinking. Feeling and behavior. Blaming and hero worship, opposite ends of the same external directed behavior. Blame is a neat little device that you can use whenever you don't want to take responsibility for something in your life. It is the refuge of the externally oriented person. All blame is a waste of time, no matter how much fault you find with another, and regardless of how much you blame him, it will not change you. The only thing blame does is keep the focus off you when you're looking for external reasons to explain your unhappiness or frustration. But blame itself is an act of folly. Even if blame has some effect, it will not be on you. You may succeed in making another feel guilty for something by blaming him, but you won't succeed in changing whatever it is about you that is making you unhappy. You may succeed in not thinking about it, but you won't succeed in changing it. The tendency to focus on others can go to the opposite extreme where it surfaces as hero worship. In this case, you may find yourself looking to others to determine your values. If so and so does it, then I should do it too. Hero worship is a form of self-repudiation. It makes others more important than you and relates your own fulfillment to something outside of yourself. While there is nothing self-defeating about appreciating others and their accomplishment, it becomes an erroneous zone when you model your own behavior on their standards. All of your heroes are people. They are all human. They do the same thing that you do every day. They each where you each. They had the bad bread in the morning just like you. The only good hero is a ham cheese and cheese, or possibly an eggplant parmigiana. I don't know how to pronounce this. All are wasteful for your effort. All the great heroes of your life have taught you nothing, and they are no better than you in any way. Politicians, actors, athletics, rock stars, your boss, therapists, teachers, spouse, or whoever are just skillful at what they do, nothing more. And if you make them your heroes and elevate them to your position before above yourself, then you are into the external back of giving others the responsibility for your good feelings. If you blame at one end of or hero worship and the other, you are someplace in the focusing on other line. Okay, makes sense, right? You are behaving as a fool if you look outside of you for an explanation for how you should feel or what you should do. Taking credit as well as responsibility for yourself is the first step to eliminating this erroneous zone. Be your own hero. When you get out of the blaming and hero worship behavior, you'll be moving over from the external to the internal side of the ledger. And on the internal side, there are no universal truths, either for yourself or for others. The right versus wrong trap. The question of right versus wrong, as it implies here, has nothing to do with religious, philosophical, or moral issues of a prior rightness or wrongness. That is a discussion for another place. Here, the subject is you and how your notion of right and wrong get in the way of your own happiness. Your rights and wrongs are your universal truths. You may have adopted some unhealthy stances which include right means good or just, while wrong is equated with bad or unjust. This is nonsense. Rights and wrongs in this case, in this sense, do not exist. The word right implies a guarantee that if you do something a certain way, you have surefire results. But there are no guarantees. You can begin to think in terms of any decision as bringing about something different or more effective or legal, but the moment it becomes a question of right versus wrong, you are trapped into the I've always got to be right, and when things or people are not right, then I'm going to be unhappy. Trap. Perhaps some of your need to find the right answer has to do with the search for certainty that was discussed in the chapter on fear of the unknown. This may be a part of your tendency to dichotomize or to divide the world neatly into extremes such as black and white, yes and no, good and bad, and right and wrong. Few things fit neatly into those categories, and most intelligent folks roam around in those gray areas, rarely coming to rest on either black or white. This proclivity for being right is most clearly evidenced in marriage and other adult relationships. Discussion inevitably becomes a contest which results in one partner being right and the other being wrong. This is a very common argument. You hear it all the time. You always think you're right and you never admit you're wrong. But there is no right and wrong here. People are different and they see things from different perspectives. If one must be right, then breakdown in communication is the only predictable outcome. So that is why I also started to psycho, and also not say psycho, when I do self-reflection and when I do self-coaching, maybe sometimes just at the spur of moment, just to solve an issue, just look at it from his point of view. If he thinks it's right, then you let him be or let her be. You don't need to agree or disagree, because sometimes those things is just a conversation bypassing to pass the day. So why are you arguing with the concept? So this is what I do when I do coaching. This is what I do when I self-coach. So I hope those who really need coaching, you really look into the areas, like small areas like this. The only ways out of this trap is to stop thinking in those erroneous right versus wrong ways. As I explained to Clifford, who is in a marriage in which he argued every day about everything conceivable topic. Instead of attempting to convince your wife how wrong she is, why not simply have discussion in which you have no should expectations for her? As long as she is allowed to be different from you, you'll eliminate the incessant arguing in which you doggedly, albeit frustratedly, pursue being right. Clifford was able to set aside this neurotic need and also to put some communication and love back in his marriage. All rights and wrong of every description represent shoulds of one kind and or another, and the shoulds get in your way, particularly when they conflict with another person's need to have his own as well. Indecisiveness as a spin-off of right versus wrong thinking. I once asked a client if he had trouble making a decision, and he said, well, yes and no. Perhaps you have difficulty with decision making even with small things. This is a direct outgrowth of the inclination to divide things into right and wrong categories. The indecisions comes from wanting to be right, and the postponement of a choice keep you from dealing with the anxiety that you choose for yourself whenever you feel you have been wrong. Once you take away the rightness and wrongness from each decision because the right implies a guarantee, then decision making will become a snap. If you are trying to decide on taking right college to attend, you might stay immobilized forever, even after you have made the decision, because maybe it wasn't right. Instead, shift the process to there is no such thing as the right college. If I select A, then these are the more likely consequences, while B will probably bring another this. Neither is right. One is simply different from the other, and you have no guarantee regardless of the choice to attend. A, B, or Z. Similarly, you can ease your indecision neurosis by viewing all potential outcomes as being right or nor wrong, good nor bad, or even better or worse. Simply different. If you buy this dress which you like, this is how you are going to look, which is the only different from not better than wearing that dress. Once you give up those inaccurate and self-destructive rights and wrongs, you'll find decision making a simple matter of weighing which consequences you prefer at a given present moment. And if you begin to choose regret over the decision, rather than deciding that regret is a waste of your time because it keeps you living in the past, you simply resolve to make a different decision in your present moment, one that will bring consequences that the I don't know why that where am I or that the earlier decision failed to bring, but never attempting to put it into a right or wrong categorization. Nothing is more important than anything else. The child selecting she sells is not doing something more right or wrong than President of General Motors making a major corporate decision. They are different, nothing more. You may believe that the wrong ideas are bad and should not be stated, while right ideas are to be encouraged. Perhaps with your children, friends, or spouse, you say it's not worth saying or doing if it's not said or done. Right, but danger lurks here. The authoritarian stance will lead to totalitarianism when extended to a national and international proportions. Who decides the rightness? That is the question that can never be answered satisfactorily. The law doesn't decide if it's wrong, only if it's legal. More than a century ago, John Stuart Mill, writing on liberty, proclaimed, we can never be sure that the opinion we are endeavoring to stifle is a false opinion, and if we were sure, stifling it would be an evil still. Your effectiveness is not measured by your ability to make a right choice. How you handle yourself emotionally after any choice is a far greater barometer of your personal present moment togetherness. Since the right choice represents those shoulds that you are working as eliminating. New thinking will be helpful on two counts. One, you banish those senseless shoulds and become more internal. And two, you'll find decision making less troublesome without those erroneous right and wrong category. Okay, let's see. Because my mother is calling for dinner, so I will need to to stop here. Okay, I stop at page 148. Tomorrow I start the next one, or maybe later I start. Okay, thank you. Bye.